So it may be cloudy around me, but it isn't really cloudy.
Right. Yeah. I get that. I totally get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, so it's great to meet you. Thanks for taking a minute out.
You as well.
So, before we get into your work, I want to know first and foremost, 4 years ago, we were wrapping our heads around this global pandemic. How did you make it through that time period and how did it change you?
Actually, that's a perfect question for the work that I do. If you understand human potential, you understand that we're designed to adapt and to survive no matter what happens. So for me, COVID was just another something that my coping system wasn't designed to deal with that I had to evolve. And because of what I do and what I know that's possible. So one of the things I had to do is I started seeing patients online instead of in person. But I'd already been doing that for several years with injured workers because in this state, workers' comp allowed for telemedicine 10 years ago. So it wasn't like I was unaccustomed to it. Plus, the model I work in works well in this environment, even though in person's great.
Yeah.
So I adapted. I started working from home, started doing telemedicine, so did everybody else. Everybody got familiar with Zoom. I evolved the model that I'm working with to help people with chronic problems to work even more powerfully in this medium, where you kind of lose that personal touch and that personal interaction. This model is open ended in terms of the power that it has to engage people. So, evolved the model, adjusted how I work with people, and found other ways to have a life.
So, let's get to the heart and soul of what you do by helping people alleviate this chronic pain. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I help people understand what they really are.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Third grade. Uh, in those days, I don't actually remember. Yeah, I kind of sort of remember. If you wanted to be my friend, you had to answer a simple question. If I had a spaceship like Star Trek and I wanted to spend the rest of my life traveling out to space and exploring, would you go with me?
That's great.
That's who I wanted to be. That's who I still want to be. I made myself a promise as a kid that I would not be buried on this planet.
Okay. Okay. So, let me ask you this. Tell me where you were born and raised and how you got to this point where the seeds of helping people discover who they are and to alleviate the chronic pain. How did you get to this point?
You want the 2 minute version or the 10-day version?
I don't think we have 10 days.
Yeah, I was born in the Bronx in New York. And then by the time I was 11, 12 years old, we moved out to Long Island, kind of grew up there. Spent most of my early life in New York. You familiar with Tribeca in New York City?
I am. Yeah, my dad grew up in Babylon. He grew up in Long Island.
Okay. So I was actually one of the original settlers in Tribeca. So the last 25 years before I came out here in the 90s was living in Tribeca in a loft. But the journey you're talking about actually started, I think most importantly, when I was 12 and a half and I broke my neck. I don't know if you read about that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So picture the situation. I was headstrong as a kid. I like taking risks. I was one of those kids who wanted to figure it out for themselves. So, don't take lessons. You can figure out how to do a backflip on a diving board, right? Did you know when you do a backflip, you're supposed to dive out, not straight up?
I had a
Found
feeling.
that out found that out the hard way because I came down on the board, broke my neck in two places.
Ugh.
So picture this at 12 and a half. I'm in the hospital. I'm in a cast. I know I broke my neck, right? This is a long time ago. The doctor walks in. He says, okay, if you don't die and you're not paralyzed, you will be crippled for the rest of your life. I'm 12 and a half,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They had me in the hospital over a month. It would have kept me longer, but I made such a fuss because I hated being there. It was really scary. And I went home and I spent the next year of my life on my back in a brace, not allowed to get out of bed or even sit up for a year. By the time that ended, I had to learn how to walk all over again. I wasn't paralyzed, but I was completely atrophied. Now, here's some of the elements that led to the work that I do now. So I was stoic. right? If you talked to me in those days, I would have been cracking jokes and acting like everything's fine, but I was terrified and I wouldn't allow myself to know that. And I basically been told that I had no ability to do anything anymore that was safe, not physically, right?
Hmm.
What that ended up doing was no sports in high school. I almost flunked out of high school, right? Because years later, I figured out why I thought you asked me in high school why I was doing so poorly. I would have told you that I was stupid. Now I've got 2 PhDs. Obviously, I'm not stupid,
Yeah.
right? But, but for years, I didn't remember why I would say I was stupid in high school because I've been fine in grade school, right? So I'm in a session with a patient about 4 years ago, and I'm telling the story. And I suddenly remembered something I had never, ever remembered all these years, right? I hadn't remembered what I thought to myself when the doctor came in the room and said what he said. What I thought to myself was stupid, stupid, stupid. Look what you've done to yourself. It wrecked my confidence. It took years to rebuild it. It took even longer to work through the trauma of what had happened. So when I encounter patients who've had something that's life altering, something that stops them dead in their tracks, something that puts them in touch with their mortality, I understand personally what that can do to you. I know the yin and the yang of it. So that initially manifested in me going to law school and becoming an attorney because I liked the idea of helping the people who were powerless, right? I understood enough about politics in our society to know that people needed to be represented. I started out with Legal Aid Society. And so I was always an advocate. I had a family that was oriented towards helping people, especially my mother. My mother wasn't one of those people everybody loved her because she was always helping everybody. She's a good role model. My father was a grade school teacher and a real teacher, good old fashioned public school teacher.
Yeah.
I tremendously admired him. So the idea of teaching, helping people, that was part of my family culture. So that eventually led to me being an attorney for quite a while. But I always knew there was something missing, right? And the something that was missing was that I became an attorney in part so I'd have a shield and a sword. I didn't think that I could be okay without that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that happened. That's why it would take a long time to tell the story. But what changed it all was when I stopped everything, dropped out, and spent months traveling out in the world with no props, no cell phones, no computers. Nobody knew anything about me. I didn't tell anybody anything. I was just me. That's when I began to discover who I really was, to my satisfaction, actually. And that led to me choosing to be what I think I always really wanted to do, and that was to work as a psychologist because I find people fascinating. As part of my internship, I started working in a state mental hospital in New York. Stayed on after the first year because I needed to finish my dissertation. Spent 10 years working with the chronically mentally ill. Came out and developed innovative approaches to helping them. Right? Because you work with that population, you have to look holistically. Right? Especially they're institutionalized, they're psychotic, et cetera, et cetera. I could spend days just telling you about the lessons I learned for working with those patients, but long story short, at some point I became disenchanted with this because the system is so broken for the chronically mentally ill. So I took a job working in a chronic pain management clinic. I knew nothing about that, but I was just trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And very quickly recognized that the patients at that clinic were suffering from the same problem in treatment that the patients in the hospital did. The medical model, the two-dimensional, the non-holistic approach. I'm looking at these people that have suffered injuries that are life-stopping and life-changing, but nobody's looking at it holistically because pain creates collateral damage, right? Let's say you become physically deconditioned, your sleep is disrupted, you start becoming more stressed, you lose the job, your relationships are trashed. There's all these collateral damages that nobody's treating, nobody's even paying attention to. The work that they were doing in their psychological department in the program was primitive. And I started developing a new model based on the work I'd done with the chronically mentally ill. Ironically, they were the teachers of how to approach this holistically. I work with every discipline in the hospital, so I know all about physical therapy, occupational therapy, medicine, all the rest of it. I already knew how to work in that kind of teamwork, in that environment. Started developing the model in the pain management clinic. The clinical director didn't want to change. He goes like, we're fine. I go like, no, you're not. Yeah, we have a model that works. They go, you're losing business. I'm also an entrepreneur, and I go like, from a financial point of view, you don't have the best model, and I could give you a better model. Oh, no, no, no. So eventually I started a practice. And over the last 25 years, I've developed a model that is superior. I know this will sound arrogant, but superior to anything that's out there, at least in this state. And I've got 2,500 patients to prove it. It's what's in that book. That book is based on work with hundreds and hundreds of patients where I've seen these approaches work,
Yeah.
but they're based on one simple idea. We have tools as products of evolution that we are unaware we even have. We don't know we have an existential immune system. We don't know the function of thinking and feeling. We don't even recognize that those are tools. And we go about living our lives, but it's kind of like the difference between no disrespect intended, a cheap Ford and a Ferrari.
Yeah.
I can get around in a Ford, but a Ferrari, that's a whole different experience, right?
Yeah.
Right. We're $1 million cars treating ourselves as if we're 15,000 bucks. So long story short is a lot of experiences built on this idea that I wanted to be helpful. I've always been innovative. When I worked in the hospital system, I developed a completely new approach to working with the chronically mentally ill that worked. And it was based on a holistic understanding. So I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah.
but it's been a journey where self-discovery and discovering who I am and what I'm all about, what people are and what they're all about, led to all of these conclusions.
So you obviously needed to have inspiration to get to a better place in your life, educationally and physically, mentally. Who was that for you? Whether it was a hero or a role model, who was that one for you?
Ah, that's a great question. The person that turned my life around was my high school chemistry teacher. So picture the scenario, right? I'm in high school, I'm failing, right? I'm in my junior year, I'm taking chemistry, right? So of course I'm doing my thing and I'm failing in the class. And this teacher, do you remember Soupy Sales?
Yeah.
All right, picture Soupy Sales as your chemistry teacher.
Yeah.
So I love this guy. He was young, he was enthusiastic, he was funny, he blew things up just for fun.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked the guy. And one day he calls me after class and he goes like, "Why are you failing my class? I wish you could have seen the conversation." I go, "Because I'm not real smart." He goes, "Yes, you are." And I go like, "No, I'm not." He goes, "Whatever. I'm going to tutor you personally." He tutored me for the rest of the quarter. I ended up getting a C in chemistry. That did not convince me that I was smart, but it did tell me that if I worked hard enough, maybe I could do better. That was good enough to get me through high school and into college and even through law school. But even then, I still didn't believe that I was really smart. I just thought if I worked really hard, I could do well. It took graduate school to convince me. But he was only one of many people. I also met a woman who I almost married who believed in me because she knew me better than I knew myself. There's always been somebody along the way for me who's been a teacher and an example and a mentor. But part of that is I've been open to it.
So what is your motivation? You've been doing this for a while. What is your constant motivation to help people and to also evolve as a professional, as a human being?
To live in the truth,
Yeah.
you think about it, the human race is incredible. The potential of the human race, everything that's ever happened in history has started with one person. What does that tell you about human potential? Right? We don't get it. We don't understand what we are. And hopefully people will live long enough. The human race will survive to reach its pinnacle. I just want to do whatever I can to contribute to that personally and for other people because the suffering that goes on in the world, the way we treat each other, the way we hurt each other, the way we've destroyed a near perfect environment. Can you imagine a planet that was better designed for human habitation? Whether it's divine or something else, I don't really care. The point is, we don't understand our gifts. And I'm determined to demonstrate that. Always been able to see to the truth, always been able to see to who people really are. When I was a kid, it was very confusing. I'd have friends and people would go like, "Why are you friends with that guy? He's a jerk." And I go like, "Not with me." I didn't know I was talking to the real person.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing this, because I think that we could, who knows what we would do if we weren't trying to kill each other off.
Yeah.
Big universe out there, right?
Uh-huh. For sure. So I'm curious, you had mentioned traveling and seeing different people and different cultures. Would you say that was one of the biggest parts of your
Huge.
growth? and just seeing the world in a different way?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, there had been teachers along the way, like that chemistry teacher, other people I knew, other mentors, but the turning point was when I was literally adopted by Bedouin when I was living in Marrakesh for a while. And it was one of those things that's happened to me a lot. I'm sitting in the local hangout with other people who travel and other, patriots and whatever. This entourage of people in Arab garb comes through the door, right? It's a big place, maybe 50 people. They walk in, the guy in the middle is obviously an important somebody. You can tell the room kind of gets quiet. The guy walks in, he looks directly over at my table where I'm sitting. I'm looking at him. He looks at me and he walks right over to me. And he goes, "Your eyes and mine are the same. We should talk." Turns out he was the shaman for the tribe. He recognized something in me. I was unofficially adopted. I spent a lot of time sitting in the desert talking about life and the universe and all those other things. But that's been the case for me. There's always been somebody out there like that that helps me to see that value. So that traveling where I was able to, most of us in our lives, at least in this country, we're a containment strategy. We don't try and live it expansively. We try and figure out some way to feel safe, some way to feel predictable. That's it, right? I don't assume anything beyond the moment. I don't live beyond the moment if I can avoid it unless it helps me in the moment.
Yeah.
I think that's a natural order. I don't think this is all there is to being human. So, these philosophies, you and I both know, there's a lot of people out there teaching. Sadhguru, you've seen him.
I've heard the name before.
You should check out Sadhguru. He's an
Okay.
amazing, amazing guy.
Yeah, I will.
Uh, of all the gurus that have ever been out there from India, this guy has concretely done more than anybody's ever done before.
Okay.
But the point is, I just want to share what I've learned. I've always wanted to share what I've learned because I think it's fun. You learn something cool, you share it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. You've had teachers that have come in your life and critical points that have led you to a better place. And you have that opportunity now to lead people to better places. What's one of your favorite client success stories up to this point?
Well, there's categories. All right. There's people I work with that I work with a lot of movers and shakers, some really important people. Nobody's immune to having chronic conditions, right? I would suggest that some of the work that I've done has saved many lives and actually changed things. That's not what I'm doing when I'm doing therapy, but helping people come to loving themselves can actually produce different decisions. There was one person, I can't get into specifics,
Sure.
that because of that work, I know for a fact that thousands of lives were saved because of the path that he took that changed from where he was headed before I met him. So I'm not there to do that, but it is one of the consequences of treatment. Uh, then there's much more simpler examples. One of my most inspiring, my patients are inspiring to me. Right. When I first started, I'm going like, what do I think I could do with this? Right. But give you an example. Some of the techniques I've developed are very powerful. And one of them has to do with how to properly understand and make use of anxiety, which, by the way, is the second most important human emotion. So here's a guy who, from the time that he was in his sixth, seventh grade to age 35, was having 3 or 4 panic attacks, literal panic attacks every week. You can picture that. And constantly in a state of heightened anxiety his whole life, right? I start working with him, apply these strategies, and it's 2 years later, he hasn't had a panic attack in a year.
Well,
His general level of anxiety is down by about 50, 60% by learning what gets learned in what we do. A lot of what we do is educational, not just therapeutic. So it might be a smaller story or it might be a larger story. But what I see happens when I work with people is things change, and they always change in a direction that's more productive and positive and inspiring. And ironically, maybe you're not surprised. The key to getting what you want in life and having what you want and feeling good about yourself is loving yourself. Seems simple, right?
right.
But did you know that self-esteem and self-love is not conditional, that it's inviolate, that it's a given, and that the only reason people think they have low self-esteem is because they have a limited access, because their childhood screwed it up. But the truth is, if you and I got together millions of years ago, right? And we go, we're going to design the human race to have some fun. And we're going to build these creatures to be survival, right? They're going to survive because the universe is hostile. Should we attach that survival to who they are in the moment? I don't think so, because that changes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether you like yourself or you don't, whether you're who you want to be or not. Self-love has nothing to do with that. When people start connecting to that, everything changes. Take people that we find inspiring, right? You ever watch America's Got Talent?
Yeah.
Yeah, love that show. Did you see Cody Lee? Do you know who he is?
I know the name. Yeah.
Cody Lee is this young guy. He comes out on the stage. He's very odd looking. He's got a cane. He's blind. He's autistic. He's probably in his late teens, early 20s.
Uh-huh.
There's a story, right? And his mother's with him, and it's obviously she loves him, and he's got this positive energy, right? And then he sits down to sing. And forget Elton John or anybody in that genre of singers. He is incredible and has become very successful, right? So what's going on here? A lot of people growing up being blind and autistic would not be the person who gets on the stage and sings with such passion, right? My theory, yet to be proven, is that I go to everybody that's ever done something inspiring and I would find somebody who loves themselves. And what interferes with people being who they want to be and getting what they want in life is that they don't have that. So this work ultimately is not about chronic pain, because any kind of pain, whether it's emotional or physical, is existential. It's in your life. You treat the life, you don't treat these symptoms.
Yeah. So of all of these things that you've done and become and overcome and evolved into, what are you the proudest of that you've done in this life?
That I've actually found a way to help people who often don't get helped, and figured out things about it that are so important that I plan on doing more and more public things to make sure that people are aware of the fact that they have so much more going for them. I mean, there's a lot of people talking about this and doing it, and they're all great. There's a lot of inspiring people, a lot of influencers. This particular understanding that we have this existential immune system, right? We have these tools and equipment from evolution, that we are superior beings. This approach to it is very concrete. It actually shows you a technology that allows you to be able to do that. I've been a martial artist for a long time. And it's kind of the difference between not knowing how to fight and knowing how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
You might survive in a fight if you don't know how to fight, but what are the odds that you'll do better if you do? Humans in this society actually need to be trained to know exactly how to deal with life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why when I talk to patients, I'm not interested in mental health and mental illness as labels anymore. It's all operating system issues. I look at the way they operate in terms of their thinking and feeling, and then we do a systems check. We go like, well, a lot of you is working just fine, but you have some non-user friendly features in the way you operate. Let's work on those.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. As the author of helping people get to a better place, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
One cool guy.
Yeah, I agree.
I am a cool guy. I appreciate the life that I've lived so far. I've done a lot. I do a lot. I mean, I have other things. I've been singing since I was a teenager. Actually turned down a record contract. I'm about to publish some children's books because I developed a style of cartooning. Picture Looney Tunes from the 40s, only with the psychological edge,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that's happening. I've written one book. I'm working on the second book. I'm creative. I'm innovative. You put me in any situation. I've started companies, run businesses. Put me in any situation, and I'm going to find some novel approach to it, some more innovative approach. I appreciate that about myself because that's not something you find everywhere.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it's had a positive impact on a lot of people.
So if anyone out there wants to pick up your book, they want to hire you, learn more about you, we've kind of scratched the surface. Where's the best place to go?
Yeah, our website is troubled right now. So you can look under newoptionsinc.com. Hopefully you'll find that. We are going to be launching actual classes, an interactive program where people are going to be supplied with pre-recorded videos about this model and a workbook. And then you're going to come to a live interactive situation where you can ask questions, get answers. And more importantly, there's no support groups out there for chronic pain that use a technology like AA does. This technology can be taught and it can be used that would actually help people, because mostly support groups just commiserate, but they don't make progress. So that's happening. I'm going to be getting out there and making myself more public. COVID got in the way, other things got in the way. But what I think I've learned is too important for it to be local.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your passion, your story. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
And thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.